dutiful, obedient, supportive, but never satisfied with your desires. Were you ever really you, or were you just Jakob's wife? Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Editing Explained, and today we are talking about the over-the-top vampire blood-sucking movie, Jakob's Wife. If you're new to the channel, be sure to give the video a thumbs up or subscribe to get videos just like this. And if you've never seen Jakob's Wife and you don't want to be spoiled by it, we do have a spoiler-free movie review right here. Go ahead, check that out. And without any further ado, let's talk about it, Jakob's Wife. The story of the Master. The movie starts out with a bunch of church mice scurrying around the church, metaphor, as we hear Jacob, a reverend, give a sermon about loving your wife.
He who loves his wife loves himself.
Foreshadowing. And of course, the scene is intercut with the reverend's wife, Anne, who looks very disappointed and unsatisfied, as if to say,
I've never been satisfied.
After the service, a young woman named Amelia comes up to talk to the couple about her mother who has fallen off the wagon and hasn't been to church in a while. From there, Amelia takes the longest walk ever back to her home. She trips over another metaphor, and only to be attacked by a dark shadow figure, simply known as the Master. The Master doesn't straight up kill Amelia, but rather transforms her into a vampire, empowering her with new evil powers in the ways that she has never seen before. The following day, the sheriff asks Jacob and Anne about the missing Amelia. Anne tries to explain, but Jacob proceeds to talk right over Anne, a thing he seems to do consistently throughout the movie. After a few days of feeling neglected, Anne meets up with Tom Lowe of a design firm to talk about an old mill she is in the process of renovating. Tom Lowe, who also happens to be her ex-boyfriend from back when they were in high school. Tom tells Anne that he's shocked that she married Jacob and remembers her being more adventurous and outgoing, even calling her Adventurous Annie. She retorts by saying that everything in her life changed when Tom left town and her mother died. Jacob and his church were there at the right time in the right place and gave her the comfort that she needed. They go to the rundown mill to give it a look, and Tom goes to kiss Anne, but she tells him that as much as she'd like to, she simply could not betray Jacob. With that, the Master unleashes a bunch of rats on Tommy, killing him instantly. Okay, what's the deal with those mice, or those giant rats? Like, they're clearly being controlled by the Master, right? And if so, why? I'm starting to suspect that this is what happens to the vampires under the Master's control when they choose not to embrace being a vampire themselves. They turn back into mice and they serve the Master. Just a theory. What do you think? Comment down below. Anyway, the Master bites Anne on the neck, and almost overnight she starts acting like a vampire. She keeps all the shades closed, she goes out to dinner but doesn't eat her food, she goes to the supermarket and asks for the butcher to give her 2 giant garbage bags worth of blood, which I gotta say is one of the funniest visual gags in the entire movie. When she gets home, she starts drinking the blood, and she turns every light in the house on. She's rearranging the furniture, she's playing music that she likes. Fun fact, the song that she is playing is called Bloodletting, the vampire song by Concrete Blonde, a song based on Anne Rice's An Interview with the Vampire. But yeah, the funny thing is that her acts of rebellion are so incredibly tame compared to what we have seen in other movies. If this was, for example, The Craft, Nancy would be running red lights, killing teenagers, going off the rail, and it just seems like all that Anne really wants to do is move that couch from one side of the room to the other. It really speaks volumes about her relationship to Jacob. Oh, and then she throws up because, you know, it's not human blood. Later that night, Anne looks out her window to see the Master standing in her backyard, calling out to her, and let's just say, she really starts feeling herself. Until Jacob walks in and scolds her for doing so. God, this guy's an asshole. I mean, Jesus, is this really what it's like when you hit your 60s? Because I'm fine checking out at 60 if that's the case. Jesus, Jacob, just let this woman live. Anyway, the following day, Anne goes to the dentist to get her teeth whitened, but ends up burning her entire face because, oh yeah, she's a vampire. While Jacob goes to the old mill to confront Tom Lowe for getting too friendly with his wife. Instead, he runs into the 7-Eleven kids that Jacob ran into earlier. He goes to leave, and then bam! Amelia drops down from the ceiling and rips out one of their throats. Damn! She also tells Jacob that she has a new savior in her life, and it's not Jesus, but one that gives her strength and a love for herself. The other 7-Eleven kid comes in and slams Amelia in the head with a skateboard, and the two run away. Back at the house, Anne is being summoned by Amelia and the Master, and is essentially just freaking out. A neighbor mistakes her for having a heart attack and decides to investigate. Not for nothing, but what about this scene makes you think that this woman is having a heart attack? When somebody has a heart attack, they typically just drop down and die. Maybe they convulse slightly. This looks like she snorted all of the cocaine and now she doesn't know what to do. Right? But I digress. So he dies, obviously. She rips his head off about halfway.
She doesn't quite chop his head off. She makes a Pez dispenser out of him.
She starts sucking all the blood off the floor, and that's around the time that Jacob shows up.
It wasn't me.
Of course it was you!
After wrapping up the body, Jacob decides that they have to find and kill the Master, which he suspects will turn Anne back into a mortal. An idea that Anne isn't exactly thrilled about, considering that she now likes who she is. But considering killing people to stay alive isn't exactly a practical lifestyle, they decide to go ahead with his plan anyway. Joel from Santa Clarita Diet would have killed his wife a whole baseball team worth of neo-Nazis, Jacob. Why can't you? When they get to the mill, Jacob is eager to kill the Master, as he claims that this is where his entire life work has been leading to. Anne argues that his Sunday school antics aren't exactly practical, and they need a real plan if they are to defeat the Master, and that they should be working as equals. But Jacob, as usual, shrugs it off.
Pardon my French, but you're an asshole.
Right? I mean, not for nothing, but this guy kind of reminds me of like the Joker Harley Quinn scenario, like in that DC.
The student becomes another master.
I think the phrase is the student becomes the master.
No, I believe it's the student becomes a master equal to the original master, but not with more mastery than that master.
It's like, equals. Good one. I don't get it. I mean, have you seen Jacob? He looks like a fat tuna. They find Amelia instead of the monster, and Anne tells Jacob to kill Amelia while she holds her down. Jacob wusses out, and Anne kills her instead. From there, Jacob calls Anne out for not trying to save Amelia, and for not doing what she was told. He also tells Anne that he is no longer her husband, and that this is all her punishment for kissing Tom Lowe.
Asshole!
Seriously, this guy sucks. First he goes there with the intent of killing vampires, the next he's running away like a little kid with a skid knee. Pick a lane, jackass! Then he blames the entire situation on Anne. She calls him out for saying that he's a coward for running away, and that he has never fought for her in the entire time that they were married as husband and wife.
You don't know how to fight for me because you've never done it.
Jacob, as usual, dismisses what Anne says and uses his religious beliefs to rationalize his actions before getting in the car and leaving her all alone at the mill. I just hate Jacob so much. Like, I hate him because he's not 100% a bad guy. He's not cartoony. He's like a real life asshole that's not really a villain. You just fucking hate him. Anne hitchhikes her way back to town, and Jacob, feeling stupid about leaving Anne behind, decides that he can't sleep and decides that he's going to go back and pick up Anne, but boom! It is too late. The Master is in his house and confronts him face to face. Mind you, at this point we discover that the Master is actually a woman and is played by Bonnie Aarons. As she has been known to scare audiences for over 20 years. She has played the nun from the Conjuring series, the mother at Death Feast in Drag Me to Hell, and even the horrifying bum from David Lynch's Mulholland Drive. And she's great. She makes for a fantastic lady version of Nosferatu. Anyway, Anne gets back to the house and finds Jacob on his knees, possessed, with a knife to his own throat. So yeah, I guess Jacob isn't as good at his job as a hunter as he claimed to be. Anne tells the Master that killing him won't make her hers, and she responds by saying that it isn't about owning her, but instead empowering her to be her own person, and to do so she has to free herself from this anchor known as Jacob. The Master makes Jacob make a small incision in his own neck, causing Anne to go into full vampire mode, lunging at Jacob. But before she bites his neck, she decides to fight the urge and to kiss him instead.
That's the power of love.
The Master leaves, and Jacob and Anne decide to get it on, which I gotta say, in a movie about head female vampires on a quest to empower other women while also using mind-controlled rats to kill people, that was the most what the f moment. I mean, it's sweet in a certain light that these two characters really do care for one another, but considering the way that this entire scene has been set up, I really did expect somebody to be killed, right? The following morning, the couple smokes a joint together to see if they can reduce Anne's need to feed on human flesh, and it seems to work. And for the first time in the story, the two leads seem to be relaxed with one another. They share a laugh, and Jacob even apologizes for speaking over her all the time. It's at this time that they're finally on the same team. They receive a phone call about an old woman who died in her house, and they take it as a sign from God and bring the body back to their home for Anne to eat. Jacob decides that while she is eating, that he will go back to the mill to find the Master. But along the way, he gets arrested by the cops, who now think that he is responsible for all the missing people in town. Back at the house, oh no, it's lasagna night with Jacob's brother and his wife, but Jacob and Anne completely forgot about it. They see Anne draining the old lady upside down into a mason jar, and they're more than a little bit shocked. They call the cops and keep Anne there, but the master comes back to save her, first killing Carol by ripping her throat out, and then biting Bob, causing him to also die. She tells Anne that Jacob needs to go in order for her to be free, that she chooses those she changes into vampires with care, primarily women that need saving, and everyone else she just eats for food. The master goes on to say that she too was once a church mouse, who was dependent on being told what to do until a vampire turned her into a master as well, freeing her and changing her life for the better. And now she's just a vampire who's paying it forward, I guess. But you know, a very considerate vampire. The cops and Jacob arrive at the scene, but the cops are incapacitated when their feet sink into the ground. The master demands Anne make a choice, to drink her blood and be a master, or to go back to being boring in an unfulfilled life. She calls her out for being overly obedient and dutiful to Jacob, but never herself. And in the background, we can see Jacob getting angrier and angrier by the second. The master leans in very close to Anne, and it looks like Anne is about to taste the master's blood, thus making her eternal, but BAM! Right before she can, Jacob stabs the master in the back, killing her instantly, as her body melts into the ground. Anne scolds Jacob for again taking away a decision that should have been hers. Jacob says nothing. He knows that she's right. The cops, who are no longer stuck in the mud, decide to dismiss all charges against Jacob and Anne, knowing that they are innocent. They write the entire vampire situation up as a domestic disturbance and move along. In the final scene of the film, Jacob discusses what they should do now. Anne says that she wants to sell the house and move away. She also says that she wants to start making her own decisions, to which Jacob gives the most slightest of nods. He asks her if that maybe we should still be looking for a cure, but Anne says no, saying that she likes who she is now, that the hunger will return, but that they can still have a happy marriage if they lay down some ground rules. Jacob asks, how is he supposed to trust her? Anne goes in to kiss Jacob, but right before they kiss, her teeth come out, and he seems to raise a stake high up in the air. We have a 1980s freeze frame, and the credits begin to roll, and we're left wondering what happens next. It actually reminded me a lot of Creepshow. All that was missing was a film turning into a comic book. So what happened next? Well, to me, this film is all about women empowerment. For her whole life, Annie has been the quiet church mouse that has been kept in her place. When she meets up with Tom in the warehouse, she has awakened a part of herself that she long forgotten. The feeling of being truly alive and truly herself. The metaphors are far from subtle. The church mice are nearly everywhere, all the vampires are women, and even the headmaster is a woman. Anne is at a crossroads in her life where she must decide to either be the person that she is on the inside, or to be, as the title suggests, Jakob's wife, a subservient church mouse that rarely even gets her way or ever gets the attention she deserves. In the end, she chooses neither, but to rather have her cake and eat it too, which to many, I'm sure, is a disappointing conclusion. It seems like it would be an easy choice, but there's a small wrinkle in Anne's life. Love. As Anne says, she loves Jacob and doesn't want to give up her life with him. This is a decision that the movie asks the audience twice, letting the viewer decide, but never telling us what Anne would do in this scenario. In the final battle, we never find out what Anne would have chosen. Jacob, being Jacob, once again makes a decision that was never his to make. And then once again in the final scene, Anne tries to fight for her inner self, and even suggests having some new ground rules, selling the house, letting her have her own voice. But in true Jacob fashion, instead of caring more about his wife, he uses his religion as a cover to enact the power that he so desperately needs to hold over her. The ending is never revealed to us because it's up to the viewer to decide, just in the same way that we all have to decide what's best for ourselves in our own lives, which is what I think the writers were going for. The ending to me reminded me a bit of the ending of Basic Instinct. Two lovers who seem to be doomed after the credits end. In all probability, it seems most likely that Anne will eventually kill Jacob in self-defense. Jacob doesn't seem like he has any plans of changing for Anne. Sooner or later, his religious righteousness will convince him that he should kill Anne once and for all, and she will kill him defending herself and win, if only because of her brute strength. As for the Master, she is not the true evil that you would expect. I mean, yeah, she does kill a lot of people, but if you notice, she only preys on the weak women of the movie who seem to seek empowerment. And you know, the assholes who more or less have it coming and just got in her way. I'm in no way saying that she is a good guy or girl, but she definitely has some layers of her that make her more interesting than your typical baddie. Much like how Freddy is empowered by those who believe in him, the Master in this movie seems to be empowered by those who don't believe in themselves, but desperately want to. I'm not sure what the correct answer would have been for Anne if Jacob didn't intercede. On the one hand, she could have taken the Master's offer and become immortal, but at what price? It seems to me that becoming a vampire, such as the Master, seems like a version of damnation as well. She would look like that, and I imagine be very lonely in the world. She wouldn't actually be able to go back to being adventurous Anne, but instead would be like her master, eating rats and turning other weak people into vampires as well. I mean, yeah, flying around does seem pretty cool, but living alone in abandoned mills like Amelia? Not so much. The film never shows us what her life would entail, and unlike a movie say like The Lost Boys, it doesn't seem like a lot of fun. Are there other vampire communities in the world that she can hang out with? Does she have to look like that, or can she go back and forth? It seems to me that Anne already has the best case scenario. She's half-turned, which would allow her to stay empowered but not isolated from the world. I mean, seriously, who wants to look like that and eat rats in a mill all day? In a statement from the director Travis Stevens, he says it all started with Barbara Crampton. Anne's story resonated with Barbara because of the correlation that she saw in the character to both her professional and personal life. We discussed what her day-to-day routine was like, what her marriage is like, what her ambitions and concerns were, the activities and hobbies she finds comfort in, the habits of her husband that annoy her, the way they fight, and how they make up. Her answers provided valuable details to the script while I was doing rewrites and doing Anne's backstory. The Master brings such a strong element of fantasy into Anne's life. Having these emotional anchor points helped keep us both firmly connected to the reality of the character and the performance. This is a movie about reclaiming your lust for life. The project allowed me to draw inspiration from and thread in references to my favorite vampire movies such as The Addiction, The Hunger, Daughters of the Darkness, Vamp, Let the Right One In, Salem's Lot, Ganja and Hess, A Girl Walks Home Alone in the Night, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Near Dark, Kiss of the Damned, and Nosferatu the Vampire. When reading the production notes for the film, there was really nothing to be found in reference to the film's ending. It laments about how Crampton and Stevens made many changes to the screenplay to make it more grounded with more dark humor and a bit more character development for Jacob and Anne, using experiences from the actors themselves, but nothing about how the film is resolved. I personally find it unlikely that Jacob and Anne will be able to sustain this new lifestyle, and one of them will most certainly die if not both go in their separate ways. It is kind of awesome to see Anne get her groove back, but at the same time, an argument could be made that becoming a vampire just to be empowered in your own life is a bit extreme, and having to kill innocent other people should not be the price for your own empowerment. The message of the film should be that you can change yourself, but oh so seldom can you change the views of people around you. I hope that Jacob comes around. As he said in the beginning of the film, to love your wife is to love yourself. But anyway, what did you think about Jacob's Wife? What do you think happened with Jacob and Anne? I need you down in the comments. What do you think happened? Do you think they actually resolved their problems, or do you think they maybe killed each other? Maybe they went their separate ways. Comment down below, and until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. I've been John, and we will see you next time.